Welcome to the Elokus podcast. This is class number 15 in the discourse, B'Shasha Hegdimu, 5672. In the fifth discourse, this is the class number 15 in the Maimer Shlach Lecha, which is the fifth discourse in the great book, B'Shasha Hegdimu 5672. And we are holding it in the middle of chapter 19 in the overall book. And this is going to be class number 9. I mislabeled one of them, so I'm going to have to fix it soon. But this is already class number 9 in the chapter 19. And we're probably going to have like this one and next one. So it's been quite a lot to go through this chapter. In any case, we were learning the various different possibilities in the experience at Sinai, at Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, when we received the Torah. I'm excited that it came out that we learned it this week, which is Parshas Yisroel in our reading right now. So we are discussing the possibilities of what the experience was when it says they saw the sounds and they heard the sights. What does that mean? So in yesterday's class, he gave a third possibility, in which the experience was that in which sight and sound remained. The power of sight and the power of hearing, power of seeing and the power of hearing, didn't change at all fundamentally. What changed was the subject matter of what they saw, because reality changed. Sight takes in the essence of something because we are close, because it takes in the essence of something, and therefore it usually takes in the physical because we are close to the physical. Sound takes in the information about something, the knowledge about its existence. The power of hearing is all about getting a sense of the about it of something, the description of something, not the essence of something, and therefore we apply that power to that which is distant from us, and we cannot take it with our power of vision, so we take it with our power of hearing. So we get a lesser connection to it, but yet that's the best we can, and that's also great. So usually the physical, the concrete material element of existence, since we are physical beings, is closer to us so we can see its essence. And the spiritual world is more distant from us so we can only hear its information. By the giving of the Torah, the natural world changed. God became very, very concrete, because the inner life force of all of existence emerged in a very assertive, emboldened way. So we were able to, therefore, it came very close to us. So therefore we saw that. And the physical material world kind of faded away into the distance. Now it didn't disappear, because God doesn't want his physical world to disappear, but it became more of a concept than of a stark reality. The stark reality was the physical world, and was the spiritual energies that are the godly life force that creates everything, was the most concrete substance, and therefore we could connect to it with our power of vision, and our power of hearing was what informed us that there is also a physical earth. There is a stone near, and there is in other words, they had to, probably when they moved around, they had to calculate through making, I didn't really move, they were sitting, they were stunned by the giving of the Torah. But imagine if they had to walk somewhere, they would have to take out their mathematical or their calculators and calculate how much feet, so on and so forth, so they shouldn't bump into the rock, because they couldn't see it anymore. They could only see its divine energy. Or maybe they were able to deduce from the divine energy, they were able to deduce what kind of creature is there, if it's soft, if it's hard, and get a sense of reality that way, through some kind of a scientific approach or spiritual scientific approach, to be able to conclude the dynamic of the physical material world. So they use the hearing for it. However, he says, based on that, comes out that there's no fundamental change in the powers. And the truth is, there's no need to say that there is. I mean, it fits very well, as we discussed yesterday, Shaimin es Anira, V'Rayin es Anishma, why the sages make that comment. Because this is more than just seeing sounds. It's seeing reality, getting a whole different experience in the entire scope of existence. However, he says, it's still, if we're going to accept this, then we're not going to have an example to support the concept that he's trying to explain in the main disc. Remember, this whole discussion is a parenthetical discussion because we're using the experience of Sinai to explain a certain concept of how the powers exist when they are in their source, in their most beginning of beginning, where he was explaining earlier, they exist, but in a way that they don't contradict each other, and they exist in this very, very refined state of existence, and therefore they have far more expansive state. But according to this, we don't really see anything, because we don't really see that in the Sinai experience other than reality changing. And therefore he said, the last thing he said was that we learned in yesterday's class, this would be similar to the soul experiencing sights and sounds when it's not in a body. So when we are divested from our physical encasement, and therefore we're not operating through the lens and through the filters of the physical world, and therefore we're left to our pure spiritual devices. So as well, a soul in heaven sees the divine and hears about the world. That's kind of the idea. However, now he's going to add another chidush to it, in which it is going to support the concept that something fundamentally changed. However, the fundamental change is not going to happen in both powers. It's not going to happen in the vision and in the hearing. The fundamental change is only going to happen in the hearing, not in the seeing. Interesting idea. In other words, our sight also changed, but our sight changed not because fundamentally the power of seeing was processing different information than it usually does fundamentally, meaning it did process other information. It processed the godly, which usually you can only hear about, you can't see it. But that's because the nature of the world changed, not because the nature of sight changed. Sight remained sight. It's just that the world changed and the godly became more real, like we said. We're holding on to that. And therefore, sight remains the way it was, to pick up what is close to it in a manner of seeing the substance. But in this, usually the substance we see is the physical, and now the substance they saw was the spiritual, but that's not a change fundamentally in the power of seeing. It's a change in the nature of reality, of the world. Okay. But he says, perhaps we can explain, since we do want to say that the miracle was of a change in the power itself, so we can apply that to the second phase of what the sages say. They heard that which is seen. And over here, we're going to drop the idea that we said earlier. What did we say earlier? What does it mean that they heard what is seen? They heard the sights, which means they heard what they usually see. Which means we explained earlier, it means they heard about the physical world. They deduced through calculations, through understanding that there is a material physical world as well. Although they lost their ability to see it, they can hear about it. That's what we said earlier. Now he's going to change that. And he's going to say, perhaps, no, let's not talk about what the physical world. Let's not be busy with the physical. Let's continue in the godly. We said they saw the godly. But in addition to seeing the godly, the substance of the godly, they also heard the godly. But if we're going to say they heard the godly, that's not a change. That's what we always hear about. Even when we're not at Sinai, even when we're here sitting in Los Angeles, we can hear about the godly. We do that all the time on this channel. We learn about the godly. So that would be just regular. That wouldn't be a chiddush. Now, what it means is that not only did they see the substance of the godly, they also heard, but not heard the information about the godly, they heard the substance of the godly. Similar to the second interpretation. What did we say in the second interpretation? That the meaning of hearing what you see and seeing what you hear means that the power of sight functioned like hearing, right? That it was able to, the power of sight took with sight, through vision, it took information. And the power of hearing, through hearing, changed its fundamental state of what hearing does, that it picks up only information, and the hearing heard substance. That's what we said earlier. They heard the substance. So that's what we're now going to explain over here. They heard the substance of the divine. So when it comes to sight, sight didn't change. Sight continues to see substance. That's what sight does. It's just that now, instead of being the substance of the world, it was the substance of the divine. Hearing, however, changed. Instead of hearing information, the hearing heard substance. The substance of what? The substance of the divine. Not the information of the divine, the substance of the divine. Now, what's the benefit of that? Why would God do that? And the point over here is because this is great. This is an unbelievable chiddush. And that is because as follows. Although we were talking all the time that seeing is so much stronger than hearing, when you see something, since you become attached to it so much stronger because you see its substance. When you hear about it, you're only getting to know the ingredients of it, or the about, the measurements, the this, the that. You're getting to know the about it, but not it. But on the other hand, there is a great quality to hearing over seeing that we didn't discuss yet. And that is when you see something, albeit that you're seeing the substance, the way you're seeing the substance is outside of you. And that's the way I think about it. Although scientifically they'll tell you that when you're seeing something, when I'm seeing a tree, I'm not seeing the tree. I'm seeing the image, that the photo that is taken. My eyes, your eyes, through I don't know exactly the situation, takes pictures. And the picture is entering, see the eye, when you look in the eye, whenever you're looking at, you can see that in the eye. So what you're seeing is really something that's taking place inside your eyes, not outside. It's not, you're not seeing there, you're seeing in your eye. Fine, but that's not the way we experience it. When I'm seeing a tree, I'm seeing the tree there. And I'm seeing how far the tree is. When I'm seeing an airplane, I'm seeing the airplane in the sky. I'm not seeing the airplane in my eye. Because the power of vision is that we get to see the substance of something, but at a distance, whatever that distance is. It can be if it's right in front of you, then it's right in front of you. If it's farther, it's farther. Actually, if something's so close, you don't see anymore, right? So it has to be at a distance, and we're seeing it outside of us. Hearing, so to seeing, it's almost like you are taking a photo of it. Yes, of course, you're processing it in your mind, but you're taking a photo of it, which is outside of you. Hearing or understanding is you're taking it inside of you. The sound waves are going in. To hear something means to absorb it inside of you. However, the power of hearing has a disadvantage that you can't hear the substance of something. You can't hear the substance. Actually, if you would hear the substance of it and take it in, it would we would gain a lot of weight from everything we hear. It would crash inside of us. We would take it all in. It would explode. We can't take in the substance. We can take in the information. But imagine if we can hear the substance. So then we would have our knowledge and our sense of the truth of whatever it is that we are now experiencing through our hearing would be even stronger than sight. Now, generally, in our world, we say, the sages say, hearing can compare to seeing. And that's because seeing has the advantage of seeing the substance, and hearing only hears the information. But imagine if we were able to hear the substance, then you would say you can't compare seeing to hearing. Because hearing is so much more. We would become convinced. We would become affected. We would become like conscious of whatever it is, to the point that it's like it would etch itself inside of us, that we would never. Sometimes you see something and you can still forget it. What you hear about, we forget very quickly. When you see something, usually it leaves a mark on us, depending on how dramatic it is that we see and that we can't forget. But even that, with the passage of time, we can forget. But if we would hear the substance, it would enter so deeply into us that it becomes us. It's like food that becomes you are what you eat. We would be like we are what we hear. We would take it in. Why? It would have both advantages. It would have the advantage of sight and the advantage of hearing. The advantage of sight being that it's substance. The advantage of hearing is that you're taking it in, which you don't have when you usually see. So by giving of the Torah, what happened was as follows. Not only did they see the divine, which we usually don't see, we only see the physical. Not only did they see the divine energy that's creating everything, the godly, but then it remains still a little distance from them because they're seeing it, so to speak, outside of them. But now it says they heard it as well. Okay? They heard it, meaning they took in that which they saw. So now the meaning of Shoimen Esanira is a little different than what we said earlier. It doesn't mean they heard what you usually see. That was the physical. That was the first interpretation. The third interpretation, the one we learned yesterday, was what you usually see, which is the physical they heard about. Now we're learning, no. We're learning like this. They saw what is heard. They saw what is usually heard, which is the spiritual and the godly. Now they were able to see. Now once they saw that, now they also heard that. Shoimen esanire. They saw now what is seen, what they saw. They heard now. They heard at Sinai what they saw at Sinai. Esanire. That would. So then, the way we're gonna read it is, different than before. Before we were saying it was an exchange. It's an exchange going on. We're reading it like it was an interlooping. Seeing what you usually hear and hearing what you usually see. That's the way we learned it in all interpretations. Question is, what does that mean? But we always learned it in all. Now what we're going to do is we're going to stack it up. The way we're going to learn this is that the sages, in order that it should flow in the words of the sages, it's going to be stacked. It means like this. Reuven, they saw, Eshanire. Reuven, they saw, Eshanishma. They saw what they usually would hear yesterday, which is the godly. Now they saw. Now now we're going to stack something higher. Now that very experience that they just saw, and that now is the nira, that which they just saw. Shoimen, in addition to seeing it, Shoimen, they also heard esanira, that which they just saw. So they heard the substance that they saw, they also heard it. And therefore it was etched in them in such a crazy way that will never ever be forgotten. Because it became one with them. The divinity that they saw actually permeated them and became completely absorbed in them, like when we hear and we take it in. This is so gewalt. This is so awesome. Now, this is going to be the way we're going to experience. He's going to explain. This is something that the way we're going to experience godliness after Mashiach in the future. When Mashiach is here, we're going to experience godliness in such a powerful way. Where do we see that? We say in a Rosh Hashanah davening, we say V'yeda kopol, that every effect, we are all effects of God. Right? God is the cause and we're the effect. V'yeda, it will know, kopol, everything that was affected, ki ato pa'alto, that you, God, has affected it, has made the effect. But hear these words, v'yavin kol yitzur, and every formation, everything that is formed, will understand ki ato yitzarto, that you formed him. Now remember we said that understanding and hearing are both the same idea. Bina is called hearing. Chachma is called, the power of Chachma, which is the power of wisdom, is called Re'iyah, seeing. And Bina means understanding, is called Shmiya, is called also hearing. So when it says v'yavin kol yitzir, it's as if it would say v'yavun, v'yishma. It's as if it's interchangeable. We will hear ki ato yitzartoi, that you have formed him. Now, by using the word you instead of that he has formed him, you means when something, you is substance. When we say him, he, him, we're speaking about somebody. That's called information. That's called knowing about, the about person. You only say you when the person is in front of you, which means you see his substance. The fact that it says, v'yavin kol yitzur, they will hear and comprehend, which is the same idea, like hearing and comprehending. Hearing, that you means that we will take in through our hearing, which is the way things enter inside of us, but not the about God, not that he created us. And even if we understand this very well, that you, in other words, the very substance of the divine will be assimilated into the person through understanding and hearing in addition to seeing. And it's going to be so much more us. And therefore its effect is going to be total oneness with God. And that's what he's explaining. Comes out, but what comes out from this? That the power of sight did not fundamentally change, but the power of hearing does change, because hearing usually only hears information, and now the hearing is taking in the substance. So it will. How was that? Because that will be explained based on what we're learning in the Maimer, because the essence of the powers were revealed. But we're going to object to that, because essence of the power being revealed is not enough for that. Essence of the power revealed means only that the power functions in a more expansive way. For it to do the opposite of what it usually does, the hearing, that requires even deeper than the essence of the power, as we're going to see in a moment. But based on this, we'll also understand, as he's going to explain, that this is even more than what a neshama experiences in heaven. True, a soul, when it's in heaven before it comes into the body, sees the divine and hears the physical. And sees the divine and also hears the divine. But when it hears the divine, it's in a manner of hearing information, not in a manner of hearing substance. Because that's not part of the capabilities of the hearing. Hearing does not hear substance. Hearing hears only information. So the soul in heaven sees the divine, and maybe on higher levels of the divine that it can't see, it hears. But by Sinai, the beauty, the magic of Sinai was that not only did they see the divine, they also heard the substance of the divine, which is more than the souls in heaven. And this is what he's going to explain now. Let's read all of this together. Omnom yesh loymar, but we can possibly say, Shalafia niskalel, based on what we said earlier. Hapirish, the meaning of Reuven Anishma, that they saw what is heard. Who? Shehischachus. Oh, so Reuven Anishma doesn't change. When he says over here, Hapirish the Reuven Anishma, it's a little tricky over here. It threw me off when I was learning it. Because it says, according to the explanation of Reuven Anishma, which means seeing that which is heard, which means seeing the godly, who, so now based on this we can say, that the newness is in the power of hearing. In other words, we have to say that it would have fit better if he said the whole phrase. So now the main chiddush is in the shomen. He's giving you the chiddush. The main change that's taking place is not in the riyah, it's in the shmiyah. Not in the seeing, it's in the hearing. The real change, who b'koyach hashmiyah, was in the power of hearing. For who, and what does it mean? Shekoyach hashmiyah, their power of hearing, hoya etzlam kamoy koyach hariyah, was by them like the power of seeing. B'pchinas, in a manner of hasagas hamohus, of grasping the substance. V'hainu, what does that mean? Loi b'chinas riyah lavad, not only did they get to see it alone, Kiyim shehesigu, but rather they also not just saw it, but also grasped muhus hadavar, the substance of the matter. Which usually we don't grasp the substance. We can see the substance, but grasp the information. But over here, they also grasped, which is the power of hearing, they grasped the substance. So then he's letting go of the idea that he said earlier, that they heard the physical. And that maybe is also true. At this state, they would hear about, but that kind of hearing is the regular hearing. That kind of hearing is referring to the hearing of when you hear only information. Now, that's about the physical, but that's not what the sages mean over here. That's an automatic outcome of seeing. When you see the divine, automatically the physical fades away. Like the Alter Rebbe, he said, I don't see the balcony. I don't see the we said yesterday, I don't see the beam of wood. I see the word of God creating it. So he didn't see the beam. But he knew about it, but he didn't see it. But so that's a natural consequence. That you don't have to say that. When the sages are saying they heard what is seen, it means that what they just saw by the giving of the Torah, which is the divine energy of everything, in addition to seeing it, they also heard it, but hearing the substance of it. And this is similar, like it's going to be in the days of Mashiach, la'asid, in the future, as it says, v'yavin kol yitzur. Every formation will understand. It's interesting that he doesn't, ki ato yitzarta, that you formed him. The fact that it says you is indicating substance. Better, the word that should apply for understanding is ki hu yitzarta, that he formed it. The fact that it says ata you is something that applies to sight, and yet we're using it to hearing. And look what will be explained lahalan further. Perek reish chav zayin. That's where he explains this at great length, how in the days of Mashiach there is an advantage to hearing over seeing, that hearing enters into you, as opposed to seeing, where you're seeing the substance but you're going to the substance as opposed to it entering. Now for that miracle, that's a complete change in the power of hearing. How can the power of hearing do a function that's not what hearing does? Because again, hearing takes in, but hearing takes in information, not substance. So that means that there was a fundamental tinkering with the power of a change in the power of hearing. Now, how did that happen? That was a miracle. But the question is, what is the science of the miracle? We said earlier that perhaps it was the revelation of the essence of the soul with its powers. And then the powers are on a far less restricted way. That's the whole point that we're learning in chapter 19. That was the main point why we're learning the whole thing. But remember, he asked and he said, no, that should only make the powers coexist with each other. That should only make the powers be broader than they are, but not to do a complete function that negates their very, very essential quality. So that's what he explains, like he said earlier. He did mention this earlier, that by the giving of the Torah, the revelation of Matan Torah was not from the 10 hidden spheres. We know the Or Ein Sof was revealed. If the nether part of the Or Ein Sof, which as we discussed earlier in all the chapters earlier, if the nether part of the Or Ein Sof was revealed, which part? Which dimension? The level of the Or Ein Sof where it's already modified in the sense that there is already 10 hidden spheres. Once there's 10 spheres, then the 10 spheres are sort of locked in position. Then the sphere is a sphere. So therefore, sight is sight and hearing is hearing. Again, because sight really originates in Chachma, and hearing originates in Bina. And since these 10 spheres already exist in the Or Ein Sof, they have to be already what they are. They're not going to be different than what they are. They're not going to be limited because they're still in a non-existent state, but they're still what they are. So you have to say, he says, that by the giving of the Torah, there was a revelation. Remember, we said that in the Or Ein Sof, there's a level where the spheros are infinite. There's not even 10. On that level, anything can be. So you have to say, Gili mebchinas atzmos Ein Sof, not the Or Ein Sof, the essence of the Ein Sof. That is higher than the 10 hidden spheres, and therefore it was able to shift the power of hearing that it should do the function of seeing. V'yesh loima, we can say, shezeu inyan tal tchiyah, that we know that by the giving, now where do we see that there was something by the giving of the Torah, there was a revelation of the essence of the Or Ein Sof, the higher level of the Or Ein Sof? Where do we see that? Sages say that the people passed out. By the giving of the Torah, everybody passed out. Every time God spoke, they passed out. Literally, their parcha nishmas on their souls left their body. And then it says God restored their souls through the dew that he's going to resurrect the dead. So he's explaining now the dew that God is going to resurrect the dead is the essence of the Or Ein Sof. And therefore, since that dew brought them back to life, it brought them back to life like we are going to be, at least for the duration of the giving of the Torah, like we are going to be after Mashiach and after the resurrection, where our power of hearing is going to function like seeing. Comes out that that this miracle comes out in he doesn't say it explicitly, but comes out that this extra miracle, that they not only saw the substance, but also heard the substance, took place after they recovered from their death. It would mean like this, after their resurrection. Could be the first half of it is what caused them to die. What blew them away, that their souls couldn't handle it, could have been what happened, that they saw what is usually heard. When suddenly you see God everywhere, the shock of that you're not seeing any more the material physical world, you're seeing just the divine energies creating everything, can shock a person to the point that their soul flees the body. But then when God brings them back, he's not bringing them back kind of to a lower state, he's actually accelerating the experience. He's putting the pedal to the metal, he's pressing down on the gas. He's bringing them a higher state, putting them into the body, and yet from that higher place, allowing them, opening them up even to a deeper experience, not only to see the divine, but to hear the substance of the divine. This is so good. This is the tchal of Tchias, and through this, the powers became completely integrated one with each other. That they can see the hearing, and also, mainly the next part, hear the sounds. Maybe from these last words could be that even the first part, that they saw since he says Royan es Anishma, since he could have said Liyashayim es Anira, since it could be that this high revelation caused the first part as well. I was saying that maybe that happened before and then they died and then they accelerated this, but could be both experiences happened. Firstly, when God began speaking even before anything, they died. That could be. But then afterwards, this extra super special experience, both of them, seeing the hearing, seeing the sights, seeing the sounds, and hearing the sound, both of them happened after he resurrected them. I don't know, doesn't explain that much. So with this, we end the parentheses, and Be'ezus Hashem next week we will continue. Meanwhile, let's have a wonderful Shabbos, and Mashiach should be here today. Now you're realizing what we have to look forward.